I didn't come in with the assumption that everybody in here is a manager. I came in with the assumption that all of us need to have the skills of leaders because we're constantly trying to influence others. So I hope that's on point with what you're hoping. If it's not, I'm not going to show you the code to the end, so you have to stick around anyways, okay? But I wanted to start with this because when I thought about leading from strength, I thought, well, where did it start for me? You know, what makes me different than anybody else? And what I realized is when I first started in Magna, so I was 22. Anybody here 22?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't say feel like you're 22. I said are 20, yeah. I miss those days. 22? Man. 25 was great. 27, fantastic. 30, great. I'm 31 right now. So what I did when I started at Magna, the first job I had, they put me into a production planner role. So Magna was and still is the biggest plant CarMax where I worked, is still the biggest plant Magna has. They have about 1,000 employees, give or take. So what I was doing is I was responsible for planning the assembly department. And what that means to you is that there was 220 people who were quite a bit older than me at 22, and I was basically telling them what to do. Because I was handing out schedules all around saying, your group's going to run this, and your group's going to run that, and you're going to run that machine, and you're going to shut down, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. And as you can imagine, that didn't go so well, because what does a 22-year-old punk know about scheduling assembly? And what I was told when I took the job was that the previous 2 people in my role had only lasted 3 months. Because the manager of the assembly department, who I did not work for, I just told his people what to do, was a very, very strong Italian. And by strong, I also mean big. He was about 6'8", commanding voice. And the funniest thing, I have to add this in, the funniest thing that ever happened was early on, before I took that role, I worked at Magna for about 2 months in a different role. And one day I was driving into work, it was still dark, I was on the 401, it was like 5:30 in the morning. And as I was getting towards the off-ramp, there was this little, I still remember, Mercury Capri in my way, and I was 22, right? So this hot rod little pickup truck. So I go flying around him in the off-ramp, cut back in front of him, trying to get to work early. I pull in the empty parking lot, and up near the front door, this little Mercury Capri pulls in. I think, oh, well, that's not good, but whatever. There's 1,000 people that work here, and out of this car, this massive man stands up. I'm like, wow, he's a big dude, right? So then we're walking in kind of together, and he says, "You in a rush?" And I thought, well, I don't know who he is, I don't know what his title is, but I better have a good answer. So I said, yeah, I'm really excited to get to work. He was the manager. So the first day I go in, he's like, "It's you." I said, oh God, no. But here's what happened. I'm in a role with no authority, no power, nothing. I have nothing. I have a schedule that I'm to hand out to 220 people or to the supervisors of 220 people, basically telling them what lines they should run, what people go where. But they know what people go where. They know what lines they like to run. So very quickly, it was an uncomfortable position to be in because I'd hand out the schedule. I'd say, okay, here you go. Here's what we're going to do today. And they'd say, no, I'm not going to run that. And I don't know how to run that. And I don't have enough people for this. And you can't give that to John. And did you know we got extra people coming in tomorrow night? And on it went. And so early on, it just didn't go well. I get yelled at a lot. That was back in the days you still got yelled at. And strong Italian, there was also fist slamming that often happened. But fast forward 7 years later, I'll suggest to you that I kind of figured my way around that role. And some of the things that I learned back then, I still employ today that we're going to talk about. But 7 years later, I took another job at another company where I was officially a manager. And I remember the day I went up to the door, and my name was on the door. I kid you not. There was a big door, my name on it. I thought, man, where's my mom? Hey, look at this. I'm doing it. This is great. So I thought, what do I do with this? Now, this is fantastic. I got a little team of people, so I'm going to go down and I'm going to meet them. Hi, I'm Shawn. Nice to meet you. And I think it was about 29, 28? I guess it was about 28 at that time. So, and the more I told them what they should do, the more I informed and directed them, the less they did. The more they hated me, the more they got ticked off. And I thought, that's not the way it's supposed to work. I am the manager. You should do what I tell you. So what I had to do is go back to my roots and start to apply the exact same techniques and approaches I'd used with 220 people that didn't like me, that didn't know me, that thought I was uneducated, dumb, and too young to know anything. And wouldn't you know, those are the techniques that work the best. So after that, I won't bore you with the rest of my career, but that's what I want to touch on today. I want to talk about, there are about 4 specific areas I want to spend some time on with you to help you, whether you're out trying to influence a senior leader in a company, whether you're trying to influence other people, team members, employees, your spouse, whatever, it doesn't matter. This will work. And this is not, I'm not going to tell you how to coach. people, right? That's who cares? That's boring. They don't want to know how to coach. I'm going to talk specifically about influence and how to use it in a leadership type role and how to draw upon your own strengths that you have today, okay? So with that said, it kind of brings me to a couple lessons that I learned during those years of my corporate career. Number one, to be a great leader, you don't have to have a title, right? Does anybody here know somebody that seems to be able to influence other people, yet they really don't have a title of authority? And you look and say, what are they doing differently than me? Why do they get to do that? Why do people listen to them in meetings, right? So we've all met those people. So, and regardless of title, oftentimes, they still have the ability to impact how other people act and how they speak and how they think. And I was trying to think of what's an example I can share with you. So some of you might not recognize this, but I think most of you will. I just wanted to share this little, oops, if I can get this to, here we go. They're ordering soup, by the way.
I think you forgot my bread. Bread, $2 extra. $2? What do you want in front of me? I got free bread. You want bread? Yes, please. $20. No, for you.
So somebody who sells soup for a living seems to have significant influence over the people that want the soup. And what I want to spend some time on today is your strengths, because some of the things that are strengths for you, whether you realize it or not, are things that other people are drawn to. And you just need to be aware of those strengths so that you can use them. And I'm going to give you a system by which you can do that later on. So that comes to the second point, the lesson that I learned, which is influence. It really is all about influence. And I think John Maxwell said it best, leadership itself is about influence, nothing more, nothing less. If you're a bad influencer, if you can't connect with people, if you don't get along with people, you're going to suck as a boss, right? And anybody have a sucky boss in their lives before? Yeah, oh yeah. And were they great connectors, good people, easy to get along with, listen to your thoughts and views and ideas? Nope, not at all. Okay? So with those two lessons in mind, I think why then is influence so important in today's society? Well, this is supposed to represent the hierarchy that we all know as some sort of typical organization today, right? You've got the head honcho, you've got secondary honchos, third, tertiary, and on we go. And the employees, the people that actually do the work, are those that are right down here. But what I wrote about in my book that's coming out in December, early ordering is up on Amazon shortly, is that the idea that today, most of us, people of our generation and even younger, they don't respond to this at all. At all. I mean, you say, hey, that's the CEO, don't say anything to him. Like, be quiet, smile, nod. They'll go up and say, hey, how you doing? Do you want to connect on Facebook? Right? They don't have the appreciation for that hierarchy, which is not a bad thing. Does anybody know where the typical organizational hierarchy came from? Why it's in organizations today? You know where it came from? It came from back in the industrial age when they said, okay, we need to manage a bunch of people here. How do we do it? They looked at the army. They said, how did the Army do it? And the Army is very structured. And they took the structure from the Army and they implanted it into industries and companies, and we still experience that today. Talk about outdated. Today, what we're experiencing, though, is a shift. Now, I couldn't really get the people to all stand up properly. But what I'm trying to suggest to you, ultimately, is that it's changing. Employees are more knowledgeable today than ever before. Right? If you want to talk about generations, stick around. I'll give you some information. No. Employees in today's business environment are more educated, experienced than ever before. And they're not willing to sit in the back seat and not be heard. And if you think that's what's going to happen, then they're going to leave. And companies are starting to realize this. So we have to change that hierarchy. So then that puts us in the driver's seat if we're up here or somewhere in the top. But in order to get stuff done, we have to do it with and through other people, which means we have to be able to influence other people. Does that make sense? Yes. Would you agree? Okay, 3 people do. That's good. My rule is if 3 people say yes, I'm moving on. So that's all I need. So I thought, okay, what are the 4 areas I want to talk about today? So here's the first one. I think if you want to be a great leader, attitude is everything. And stop there. Hard stop. I don't think I need to say much else. I will, but I don't think I need to. If you come in with a bad attitude, You're wearing your problems on your sleeve, right? Who here, be honest, has some problems, troubles, or stressful things going on outside work today? Raise your hand. Yeah, everybody look around. You are not alone, right? So the problem is when you go into a working environment and you're dealing with people, you don't necessarily know what's going on in their personal life, do you? Some people will tell you way more than you ever want to know, right? But then there's people that don't, and you don't necessarily know what's happening. So your attitude towards that person is everything, and how you present yourself is everything. If you go and say, yeah, how's the weekend? Oh, it's fine, it was all right, it's good, Weather sucked, the car wouldn't start, my dog died, Sounds like a country music song. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Where I've met a lot of great leaders. So today what I do a lot of speaking, but I do a lot of consulting as well, where I go in and talk to CEOs and presidents of all sorts of companies, and you'd be shocked at the stresses they're dealing with, no different than you are. Plus, they can't sleep at night because they got a company that could do really well tomorrow or could go down the tubes. Not really sure. A little bit of stress, right? And yet they go out there, most of them, not all, they go out there, they put on a smile, they interact with people like it's a good day, right? Meanwhile, they got to go back to their room or their office to take a call from the bank because they might lose it all tomorrow, right? That's a great boss. Attitude is everything. So I was thinking about well, I'll give you a few points here, but I'm going to do an exercise with you. I hope you'll participate in and trust me on. Scare anybody when I say that? Trust me on? Okay. But what is attitude? Well, a positive mental attitude, if you want to look at a definition, it's the belief that one can increase achievement through a consistent focus on being optimistic. Who here is optimistic? Yeah, who said that? Did you? Who said depends what it is?
Depends on the day.
Depends on the day. Somebody else said depends what it is. So I gotta tell you something. So I used to be what I called a realist. Anybody else a realist here? You know what a realist is? A pessimist in disguise. Huh? And you would recognize a realist because they would say things like, let's be real here. That's not really going to happen, right? I'm going to tell you the way it's actually going to happen, but that's not that, right? Don't be so optimistic. That's a realist. They're a pessimist in disguise. But here's the good news. If you are a pessimistic person or a closet pessimist, there are ways by which you can be more optimistic. And I'll tell you the truth. I continue to work on these things myself. But I went to a conference last year, and anybody ever read Learned Optimism by Martin Seligman? Maybe heard. If you haven't read the book, it's a good book. I went to a conference last year where at the end of it, somebody asked him, and he's a PhD in psychology, been known, written several books, been around forever. They said, what do you suggest that somebody does to be more optimistic? And he said, it's very simple. He said, every night when you go to sleep, before you fall asleep, think of 3 things that you're thankful for. Any 3 things. Can be the same 3 things. Your kids, your spouse, your house, your job, the fact you're healthy, whatever it is. 3 things before you go to sleep. And I try and practice that every night. Usually I get through the first one and I fall asleep. But nonetheless, I'm still going to sleep with a positive mind. The second is replacing negative self-talk. And we all know this, but who has that little voice that tells you can't do something or you shouldn't do something? Anybody have that little voice? You have to picture that voice as a little guy in the shoulder that you flick off. I said flick off. I didn't say, I got a few odd looks there. I want to clarify. But you need to replace the negative self-talk. And you know what? It's as simple as when you hear the voice. So the voice says, here we are. I'll give you an example. I'm going to walk up here and I'm thinking. So I have my notes, basically a 1 page with a few ideas I scribbled down. I'm standing here and the room's filling up. And in the previous session, there wasn't as many people. There wasn't that many people at all, but nonetheless, so there wasn't a lot of people, and I thought, there's not going to be a lot of people, it's going to suck, it's going to be me, it's going to be like the productivity session, me and 3 people, right? And it's not going to be as much fun. So I thought, okay, how do I turn that around? How do I replace that negative self-talk, that voice that's in my head? Because I know it's happening. So number 1, I have to catch it and realize it, and then I have to say something different. I say, you know what? A small group is a fun group. So you have to catch yourself saying it. That's the biggest challenge, and all you have to do is replace it with something positive. And sometimes that's just the opposite of what you're thinking. Whether you believe it or not, doesn't matter. Replace the negative self-talk. The third is let go of negative experiences. We've all had bad things happen to us in our lives, right? Anybody had something bad happen in their life? Yeah, every one of us, right? And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because we all have to move on. Every single one of us. Life goes on. There's all sorts of sayings I could give you, right? Life is for the living. Life goes on. But ultimately, we have to let those things go. We can't hold grudges because that kind of thing that drags down our attitude, right? We carry that around like baggage. And the last point is we have to take active responsibility for our life. Whatever you think you can do, guess what? You can do it. And I'm not, well, okay, I am a little bit of a motivational speaker, but I don't promote myself as such. But let me tell you this. So the last corporate career I had was at a company called Bruce Power, which is somewhere near here, kind of, sort of. I made fantastic money. I had full benefits. I had pension. My wife was at home, pregnant with her first child. Everything's great. And I quit cold turkey and started doing this. Now, I planned a year before. I decided I was going to do it. And this is being recorded. So, hi, boss. About a year prior, I decided I was going to go out on my own. So I spent about a year. We saved money. I went to my wife, and I said, I've been thinking about doing something. Here's what it looks like. Here's what it'll be. I want to do it in about a year. I figure if we save this much money, we had planned for her to stay at home after the first child. And I said, you're going to have to go back till we have our second. And by the way, this custom home we just built, we need to sell it and move back to a smaller one. So we're still married. But ultimately, that's exactly what we did. And here I am today. It's been 6 years, and the bank hasn't shown up. And to an extent, it doesn't seem to me like that big a deal. And I tell people, like, holy cow, you quit a job and started your own thing. Yeah, still a big deal. But now I look at other things. So last year, about a year and a half ago, I decided I want to write a book, right? So I thought, write a book? I can't write a book. Who can write a book? I write the odd article, but write a book. So I thought, well, I'm just going to go ahead and take the actions and pretend I'm going to write a book. See what happens. So I found a few people who wrote a book proposal. I kind of used their outline. I wrote my own based on an idea I had. Put it together, and then I said to somebody, what do you do now? They said, talk to an agent. So I said, do you know an agent? He said, I know several. So they introduced me to some agents. I talked to them. Anyways, long story short, the book was submitted in April. It comes out in December. Now, thank you. But I tell you that because I'm an only child from a little place called Owen Sound. If you look on the map and you look at Georgian Bay, that's the bumhole of an elephant. If you actually take a look at what it looks like, you'll actually see an elephant. You see the tail, and you'll see right where Owen Sound is. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. Anybody can do it, right? So now I said earlier to Camille and Ashley, I wasn't gonna mix up my productivity and leadership talk here. I think I'm going that boundary. So what I want to suggest to you, I want to try something. Let's keep an eye on my time here. So anybody have something that they have a bad attitude about? Something that you don't like? Maybe it's something you have to do, right? You don't want to do it. Anybody have something like that? Yeah.
Bad drivers.
Bad drivers. Okay. So you don't like bad drivers, or you don't like driving because you're around bad drivers?
No, I just don't like them.
You don't like bad drivers? Okay. So what do crazy drivers look like?
I'm sorry?
What do those bad drivers look like? What kind of things do they do that suggest to you they're bad drivers?
Well, they cut in front of you, or they drive too slow in the fast lane.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
Okay, so it's a combination of they're driving so fast they cut you off, but they're also going too slow. Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of one, but not the other. You can guess which one. So here's the thing. If you were to think about those people, when that happens, so somebody cuts you off, you hit the horn, you flick the bird, whatever you do, right? I'm sure you get angry, right? You get up behind them. So that happens, and so then you think at the time, a bad driver, right? Man, that person's annoying, right? If I could only get out and have a word. Yeah, and cut you off. So when that happens, has it ever crossed your mind that maybe there's a remote chance, and I mean really remote maybe, right? Sometimes you can tell, like if it's a 20-year-old window down, they're probably just a bad driver. But if it's somebody else that looks semi-normal, right? Then you're going to look at them and you're going to say, well, here's what I want you to do. Instead of getting mad and thinking bad driver, think for a second, are they going somewhere in a hurry, right? About a year, no, not a year ago. 3 years ago now, my oldest son, who's almost 6 now, had what's called a febrile seizure. I don't know if you ever heard of that. So he had a bad fever, which is no big deal. Kids have it all the time. He was sitting at the kitchen table, and he just dropped like a rock to the floor. So I picked him up, and his eyes were rolled back, and he was shaking, and had no idea what was going on. So I held him in my arms. My wife, we got in her car, right? And we're only 6 minutes from the hospital. I mean, it's Owen Sound, right? The hospital, you can see it, right? So I'm in the back seat, no seatbelt, and she's driving up the street, and it's our busy street, and there's stop signs, and she's like, oh, I got to wait for them to go, and I'm just screaming, like, go, because I had no idea what was happening, right? So she drove like an idiot to the hospital. Idiot, through red lights. There's no cars, go, just go. We went in, so he's fine. That happens to kids apparently all the time. But my point is this, that there might be the odd person that does that has a reason for it. And you or I don't know that, right? And I'm no different than you. I get annoyed. You live in Owen Sound, there's a lot of slow drivers, right? They probably shouldn't be driving there. And actually, Craig here that's on the video camera, everybody wave to Craig. So Craig's from Owen Sound, and he can vouch for the fact we got a lot of slow drivers in Owen Sound, don't we? You sometimes wonder if they're dead at the wheel, right? They're just too slow. So my point is this, okay? Relative to a positive attitude, and specifically about replacing negative self-talk and letting go of negative experiences, the next time that happens, flip that thought around and think, okay, hold on, I'm going to take the opposite approach. Maybe that person has a reason for doing this. Maybe not, but maybe they do. And I think you'll find if you do that, you're forcing yourself to create a different view, which creates a different attitude in you. Because now you don't show up for work all like, right? You show up for work going, somebody said to you, how was the drive? You say, well, somebody cut me off, but maybe they had a good reason for it. Might have been going somewhere in a rush, maybe an interview they're late for, somebody was sick, who knows? So it really is that simple to change your attitude, right? It's easy to focus on the negative. You have to consciously focus on the positive, which means it's more difficult. So, relative to a positive attitude, the second thing I want to share with you is the idea that we need to be, this is self-realization, but we need to really be self-aware. Self-aware of ourselves, our tendencies, our reactions, our responses. You going to get the wine, Chris? Okay, cool. So, if you think about self-realization and self-awareness, here are some points to consider. And I want to start with this here. Does anybody know what that is? Anybody see what that is? That's my knee. I can't Photoshop. So that is that guy's foot against my knee. And if you notice here, I don't want to block the thing, but here we go, here. There's gap, like I'm not up against the armrest. I'm into the armrest. So that was last Monday. I flew out to New Brunswick, did a talk, and I flew out Sunday night, get on the airplane, it's like 8 o'clock or something at night. Get on, and almost everybody's boarded, and I'm thinking, yes, the window seat is open, right, I can relax. It was a small plane. And this guy gets on, so I want to do this because I want to see somebody else's reaction. But no, what's everybody groaning about? It's not that bad. Trying to figure out how I can do this. Okay, I'll do it with you, okay? So you're me sitting, and people are getting on the plane like this. His seat is next to yours. So he comes in. Now picture there's armrests beside you. And there's not, but picture there is. I'm going to use a table's armrest. He comes in, he goes like this. And sits down beside me. So his face was here. And I'm sure my face, I'm like, what in the hell are you doing? And there was nothing. There was nothing on his face at all. Stone cold Steve Austin. And he sits down. And then I realized, okay, so he's just going to sit down. Whatever, that was weird, right? And then the first thing he does, elbow, boom, right on the armrest. I'm like, really? It's a 2-hour flight. But then he crosses his legs. And he does this, right? So this gentleman was not very self-aware. Would you agree? So here's what I did. What's your name? Margaret. So honestly, I tell you the honest truth, I practice what I preach. So as his foot is touching my leg, and like I'm an only child, I don't do well with cuddling, right? Don't touch me, right? So I'm thinking, Margaret, okay, maybe there's a problem. First thing I thought, maybe the guy's huge, tall, that's why he has to, bend over, because I didn't really get a good look. Well, I did, but not. Right? And then the second thing I thought is, okay, so he's touching my leg, maybe he's got long legs. But then I started thinking he wasn't talking. Even when they asked, do you want a drink? He just, like it wasn't, I thought maybe he's got a handicap. So I presented all the potential options to the point that I was able to become satisfied with his foot there. Yeah, I let it go. I didn't react. I just let it go. I took a picture. Oh yeah, because I texted to my wife. I said, you will not believe this. You will not believe, I'm being touched by another man. Look at this. So, and she's texting me back, who is it? I said, I have no idea. He just wants to cuddle up. I don't know. So nonetheless, he's not very self-aware, but I gave myself a lot of options as to why he was like that, what was actually going on. Now, from that point, here's the way this ended. I'll tell you really quickly. So eventually he moved his feet around once in a while. He took his leg away. He put it back up. He did become conscious. He did stop touching me on my leg anyways. Armrest was his the rest of the trip. We get off the plane, and I'm about to unload. I'm in the first seat. So I'm thinking, I bet you he's going to jump in front of me. I know he is, right? What do you think he did? So I immediately opened up the thing to get my bag, and as I did that, he scoots in front of me because he had no bags. I'm like, whatever, that's fine. So we go down onto the tarmac. New Brunswick is not a massive airport if you've ever flown in, right? So you go onto the tarmac, and I'm like, okay, he's old, I'm young. I scoot by him, I'm gone. I'm like, I'll never see the man again. Good riddance, have a nice life, right? I go out the front, get in a taxi. He's gone, long gone. Get in a taxi, drive to the Delta in New Brunswick, St. John, New Brunswick. Staying at the Delta. I'm getting out of the taxi, paying the guy. Another taxi pulls in. It's him. And I'm on the machine. I'm like, come on. He goes in ahead of me, and I'm like, I bet there's only one person at the counter. Guess what? One person at the counter. And you know what he says? I don't want that room. I don't want 2 double beds. I want a queen. And the guy's like, well, I don't think we have a queen. So I really want a queen. And on it went. I was like, oh. It's ever time for something to relieve stress. So I stayed calm. I thought, okay, that's fine. And nonetheless, he checked into his room. I checked into mine. Never saw him again. Okay. But my point here is, do you think he's not very self-aware? He does not understand the impact he has on other people, specifically when he touches them without their permission, right? So if you keep that in mind, here's a few points to consider about being more self-aware. So we have to understand our behavioral tendencies. Now I'm going to expand on a couple of these points in a second, okay? We have to have the ability to connect empathetically with people. If you are somebody who's stone cold, if you are somebody who just can't connect with other people's issues and challenges and show them some empathy, at the end of the day, you're going to have a hard time influencing other people because you have to be able to find a way to connect with people. It doesn't mean if they tell you a sad story, you need to cry with them, but you need to feel empathetic for them and offer suggestions, solution, and support. We need to create appeal in our messages. Who here is a monotone speaker? Be honest. Anybody here a monotone speaker? Okay, anybody ever met somebody who's a monotone speaker? Oh, yes, right? Do they have a lot of appeal in their messages? Do you want to listen to them at all? No. So we have to have some sort of appeal, which can mean things such as enthusiasm and volume and tone and inflection, right? And the last is we need to work on our self-esteem. Going back to my story before about a couple things that I've done in my life that I never thought were possible, but here I am. And they're no big deal today to me because I've done them, and if I can do them, you can do them. But the only way you'll build self-esteem, in my experience, is through practice, is through taking things that you don't think you can do and do them. I'm not going to be responsible for your life here, but if you want to go jump out of a plane or go zip lining, go do it. There's lots of people doing it and living every day. Why not you, right? So self-awareness is something that we want to build upon. Now, the behavioral tendencies, this first point, you guys have probably heard of or been part of some sort of DISC assessment at some point in your life. So as you probably know then, DISC comes from William Marsden, who back in the 20s decided that there were predominantly 4 different styles of people. And the styles, as he described them, and I'll start clockwise, there's those who are dominant. So the characteristics of dominant people, they're direct, decisive, independent, et cetera, et cetera. I won't read them all to you. There are those people who are very influential. So they're very social, they're charismatic, they're engaging, they're outgoing. There are those who are very kind of steady state, if you will. So they're more quiet, more monotone. They cooperate easily with others. They enjoy working in smaller teams. And last but not least, there's those folks that are very compliant. So those are folks that are analytical. So they're data-driven, meaning you would recognize them as somebody who asks you why a lot. They can seem very monotone. They want to understand what's behind that decision, where did it come from. So when Marsden put this together, what he said was, okay, not everybody falls into one of these areas. We fall into a combination of these areas. So you have each of these within your own behavior to a different degree, to the point that there's 68 different combinations that can exist. So here's the challenge that happens. If we want to be self-aware, if you can look at this today, does anybody have a clue where they stand as far as at least one primary area here? Can everybody figure out one primary area? That is the key to almost any influence you'll ever want to do. Because what happens is when we know about ourselves, when we're self-aware, and here's one aspect of self-awareness, and you use that to your benefit, then you're in a better position to influence other people. For example, you go to the VP of Finance and say, hey, I need some budget for that event that we're having. And the VP of Finance is what budget? What are you talking about? Do you have a plan? I'd like to see the plan. I haven't heard from anybody that we're having any sort of event. Last year we spent $500. This year it's cut in half, $250. Get the best speaker you can, right? What kind of predominant style do you think a VP of Finance might have using this? Yeah, you're an analytical thinker, right? You can make a pretty quick assumption that most people in finance or engineering are analytical. And I'm going to tell you right now, most of you, not all of you, but most of you being in the roles that you're in, which is a very social role, most of you have a combination of these two, probably this one for sure, and some of this one in you, which means you are going to clash with the analytical people, right? When they say this, you're like, what are you talking about? I was just told to get it done. Like, I need more budgets. This is the best event ever. And they say, no, not going to spend any money. I can't imagine those that work for associations that have, like, accounting people in them. So, I don't think I'm going to be able to use this video for anything. So, if you keep this in mind, this can be powerful relative to influencing other people. And here's where it comes into play. If you think about it, you've got your own personal behavioral tendencies. That is how you behave, how you see the world, and how you behave in the world around you. Something happens, you react, right? I'm always excited when somebody comes back. Because when they leave, I think, oh, I sucked. So but then they come, no, that's good. No, that's good. Then they come back, I'm like, that's great, it wasn't me. But I haven't showed the code yet, so that could be the way. So our own personal behavioral tendencies, if we end up finding somebody else that's similar to us, then we get along really well with them. Hence, you guys get along well with one another because you all have, some sort of characteristics here, generally speaking, right? So you get along well with each other. You talk to each other and you think, wow, this person really gets it. I wish I worked with more people like this. Then you go back and you deal with somebody maybe who's analytical, and suddenly there's some sort of conflict because your styles don't align with theirs. Okay? And this is happening around us at all times. You can take this to quite a bit of detail if you want. But what I want to suggest to you today is that if you want to be more influential, what you need to do is focus on whose style, yours or theirs. Yeah. And then what do you do once you figure out their style? You change your approach. If you're going to see the VP of Finance, maybe you're going to take data on last year's conference and what the costs were and what the budget was and all sorts of information. And you're not going to go and expect a quick answer because the analytical person's not going to give you a quick answer. They need time to assess and analyze the information you give them. So if you start to use this in your day-to-day world, your day-to-day life, I guarantee you'll be more influential. And all you're doing is starting to think about what kind of person is this person, and how can I frame information in a context that they would understand and appreciate. Now, you might think that they're picking up on what you're doing, right? You might think, oh, they're going to get what I'm doing here because I've never been analytical and now I want to sit down and talk numbers with them. But I'm going to suggest to you if you start to do that, they're not going to pick up on it. They're going to think, wow, Shawn's finally coming around. He's been a little bit of a moron for years, but he finally sees the value in a lot of information and analysis. That's what they're going to think. Okay? So with that in mind, I wanted to give you a little bit of a process here that we could, I'm not clipping anymore. Maybe I turn myself, no, on. Okay. Bear with me, guys. Technology is great when it works. There we go. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a way by which you could use that tool, okay? And I call it perceptual mapping. Now, has anybody ever heard of that before? This is what marketing companies use when they're trying to figure out their customer base and how to present different products and services towards their customers. So here's what I want you to do. Everybody has a pad of paper and a pen. I would like you, on your piece of paper, to draw something that looks like that. We have nothing but the best here as far as visuals. It's a big T. Everybody see that? So at the top, I want you to write strength. So right here, at the very top of that T, write strength. Very, very top center.
Like in the middle?
Very top center. Top of the T. Draw a big T, very top of the T, put strength. Almost like it's teetering on top of the T. You know what I'm saying? Right there. At the very bottom of the T, that would be the opposite to the top. I'd like you to write weakness. Oh, somebody's really enjoying me on Twitter. That's great. I don't mean that in an inappropriate way. I mean, they're tweeting. They're tweeting things and it's showing up. I just use that to check the time. Okay. Now, on the left of the T, out at the very end of that T, what I want you to do is put less effective. Just write out less effective at the very end of that left-hand side of the T. We spare no expense here for visuals. On the far right, I want you to put more effective. So the far right-hand side of that T, put more effective. So what you should have now, if you look at your T, not cup of tea, but the T on the piece of paper, you should have at the top strength, bottom weakness, left-hand side less effective, right-hand side more effective. Everybody have that? Okay, so here's how you can use this. So this is perceptual mapping. So I want you to think of one person who you want to influence. Think of that individual and think of what they're like. Are they analytical? Are they detailed? Are they direct? Are they social? And think of all the aspects of that person you can come up with if you kind of were to break them down and explain what they're like to somebody else. And I'm going to ask for a volunteer. That worked well.
Right here? No, over here.
Says Lauren, you've been voluntold. Fair enough. Okay. So here's what I want you to do, Lauren. So can you briefly describe to me the person that you're thinking of?
In a positive or negative light?
It doesn't matter. Like, I mean, don't call them names.
Neutral? Charismatic, outgoing. Negative at the same time.
Okay. Detail-oriented or not?
No.
They like detail or not so much?
No.
Big picture thinker?
No.
Small picture thinker?
Yes.
Direct and in your face or soft and what do you think we should do?
Depends on the time, but direct and in your face.
Okay, direct and in your face. Black and white?
Yes.
Okay. And, okay, so there's a few characteristics. I may ask you for more. Now, here's what I want you to do. And maybe somebody else can draw that. Who has a big piece of paper with a big T? As we describe this individual, what we're going to do is identify on this chart, and then I'm going to show it to you after, okay? What we're going to do is identify this person as compared to you, okay? So you've heard some of the things about this. So this person is black and white, direct, charismatic, open to new ideas and others' opinions. Not at all. Sounds like a great person. Now, briefly describe yourself. Are you open to other people's ideas and opinions?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're going to do is, where you see it's less effective and weakness, that's a strength of yours. Would you say a strength of yours, or do you like to engage others and you're successful doing that? So it's a strength, but it's less effective. So just put it somewhere over there. Can you be direct if you need to be?
Yes.
You can be direct. So if you need to make a decision, you can get on it.
Yes.
And they're much like that. They're kind of a get on a decision, black and white kind of.
Yeah.
To an extent. Okay. So what we're going to do is, that is a more effective strength. So you put that somewhere over here. Relative to, are they warm and fuzzy?
No.
Are you warm and fuzzy?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're warm and fuzzy. They're not. They're cold and dark and mean. Okay. Are you married to this person by chance? So put that as a weakness over here.
She needs a new spot. Anybody have any vacancies?
Well, I can already tell you how to approach them, but I want to finish the exercise. So how would your interactions with them, what kind of things are you dealing with them on? Information, data? Life.
Advancing in life.
Advancing in life. So
Not like raw data, but like trying to empower them.
Okay, is this a person at work? Or outside of work?
Outside work.
Okay, outside of work. Okay, that changes it up. Interesting. So this is somebody who you're trying to get them to take a broader perspective rather than be kind of closed-minded?
Yes.
Okay. So you're very open-minded, they're very closed-minded?
Sorry?
You got to pay attention. We're doing a live thing here. This is for credits, for heaven's sakes. So are they very closed-minded?
Yes.
And you're very open-minded?
Yes.
Okay. So I would put that on the, it's a strength, but it's back here again.
Oh, we already kind of did that.
Well, I'll do another one. Yeah. Please.
Still open-minded.
Yes. Yeah. It's a strength, but it's less effective. What kind of things work when you interact with this person?
They
Tough love. So you're direct, you're boisterous, you're in their face. Yeah? Can you write that over here? So we got direct, in your face, point blank. So, okay, so here's what I'm doing, okay? Now I don't know this person, and you're in front of an audience, so you're being a little bit inconspicuous, but I understand why, right? So here's what I'm doing. We're taking that cross. Can you show that to everybody? Not like they can read anything. So what we're doing is, and what's your name? Caitlin. So Caitlin took that little cross, and where it was a strength of yours, and you deemed it as effective in dealing with them, she noted it in the upper right, because that's strength and effective, right? Where it was a strength but less effective, she noted it on the other side, right? So that'd be towards the left-hand side of the T. Where it was a weakness of yours and less effective, it was bottom left. Where it was a weakness and more effective with them, it was bottom right. The point is this: what you want to do with this piece of paper is then fold it in half, and you say, okay, everything I need to do to get through to this person is now on that side of the paper, which is the right-hand side of the T. Meaning it's either a strength of me and it's more effective, or it's a weakness of mine, but it's still more effective. Now, can you fake things? Right? Right? You can fake being nice, you can fake being direct, you can fake being mean if you have to be, like the tough love idea, although maybe not you naturally. But now on the right, you have a way by which to approach that individual to be more effective. Because what's happening is you're approaching this person the way you want to approach them, the way you feel comfortable and you feel is normal, but they're not receptive to it because that's not the way they see the world. And the only time they see the world the way you do is when you're in their face, direct, blunt, just like they are. So I want to suggest to you that that's the way you need to deal with them all the time to be effective. Right now it feels like, oh my gosh, this is uncomfortable. And then you sit back and go, huh, that worked. Weird. And then you go back to being you, right? And they're like, right? The only way they're going to be receptive is if you continue to respond and react that way all the time. Because you're shifting your style, which I would assume sounds like an I, an influential person, to their style, which sounds more like a D, a direct, a dominant person. You're making the shift when you get angry, because when anybody gets angry, they're direct and dominant, right? So that's what's happening. And they're going, okay, finally you stand up. That makes sense to me. That's good. You have to try and be that way all the time, which is challenging because we are who we are. Would you agree? So does that make sense? Is that a simple way? I mean, I know that was maybe a quick exercise and it isn't the biggest piece of paper in the world. Well, maybe take a picture and put it up on Twitter. Yeah. But all you need to do is, if you look at your strengths and weaknesses, which are most effective and which are least effective, and then once you get that done, take the right-hand side of the paper, which is anything that is more effective, whether it's a strength or weakness, and you just start, if it's a strength of yours, use it more often. If it's a weakness, practice it, apply it. Right? If somebody wants more information, give them more information. If they want you to be more direct, be more direct. And you're going to notice a difference in how you're influencing those people. That's perceptual mapping. Thank you very much, Caitlin. All right, I'm going to see if this is working again. Yeah, thank you for the example, Lauren. Appreciate it. I'm back and working. Did somebody touch that while I was back there? Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so strong leaders then are strong influencers. So we think about this conversation around influence. We consider our audience's best interests. We give before we expect to receive. We're consistent and committed in our views. And we build credibility into our viewpoints. So I want to talk briefly about the first point because I think it's important and it builds on what we've been speaking about already. Can everybody see that okay? So we just said a minute ago that relative to behavioral styles, Marsden says there's up to 68 combinations of different behaviors. And we, in a sense, demonstrated through this example that other people who behave differently, we see them as odd, as different. Right? Whereas people who behave the same as us, we see as normal and good people. Would you agree with that? So, yeah, and if you take that example and say, okay, I just need to think about their behavior versus mine and I need to change my behavior, it's a little more complex than that because what you're going to go upstairs about, shortly, I guess, in a few minutes and talk about, unfortunately, except for productivity people, is you're going to talk about generational differences. So if you think about this here's the way I want you to look at this relative to being influential and putting things in the best interest of other people. Would you agree that there are thousands of life experiences people can have? Right? So I told you before, I'm an only child. Right? I've been divorced. Got married too young, got divorced really young. all of those things have influenced who I am. I live from Owen Sound. I'm from Owen Sound, for heaven's sakes, right? All those things influence who I am, how I see the world, right? I am of a certain generation, as are you. There are 3, as much as everything you read today says there's 4 generations in the workforce. There's not. The 4th generation, they're dead, right? They're traditionalists. They're dead or they're long retired. And if they're still working, somebody should tell them, like, get out. My goodness. Like, my dad's 72 and he's a boomer. So that means traditionalists are 80 and they're still working. So in some family-owned businesses, that is the case. But mostly, come on, get out, right? Give everybody else a job. Okay, so we've got thousands of life experiences. We've got 3 different generations working together. We've got 68 different behavioral combination styles that we just talked about, right? Anybody ever done MBTI, Myers-Briggs, right? What did it say? There's 16 different thought patterns, right? And then we've got different social environments. Now here's what's interesting. If you forget the social environment just for a second. We walk around, right, and we assume everybody thinks like we do, sees the world like we do, but let's do the math. Let's make this simple. Take 1,000 life experiences times 3 different generations times 68 different behaviors times 16 different thought patterns. Anybody know what that comes to? About 3.2 million. That means there's a 1 in 3.2 million chance you're going to run into somebody who sees the world the exact same way you do. Which means you're better off considering the individual and trying to put things into their best interest. Right? Because if you do that, they're going to see you as somebody who sees the world they do. They're going to connect with you, and you're going to be able to influence them. Anybody ever bought a car? You ever notice the salesman will change their approach depending on what you want to do, if it's a good salesman? If you're looking at the car and you say, well, I like blue. Blue, we have lots of blue. Come on, I'll show you blue, right? And then you say, I want to see the numbers. Numbers, yes, we should go and look at numbers. Have a seat, right? They're constantly changing their behavior based on cues that you're giving them. That's how you influence people. That's how you do it in sales. Right? We could have done a whole separate conversation on how you can sell the people buying from you, right? But it's all through the same stuff. It's all through influence. You guys are quiet. I'm just seeing if somebody else is liking me on Twitter, but nobody else. Who's Shan M? Shan. Hey, how are you? So it's going good so far. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, okay, fair enough. I appreciate that. All right. So here's what I want to do now. So we've got a few minutes left. I want you to do some work for a couple minutes for me, okay? Because I don't like to walk away from any session whereby you don't take something away, okay? So I got 3 questions I'm going to put up. I want you to clean off a piece of paper on that pad, and I'm going to get you to answer them. Then we're going to have a few people talk about them just as volunteers, and then we're going to wrap up, okay? So here are the questions. What are 3 things that you're going to take away from our discussions today? I don't care what they are. 3 things that are important to you that you think you could use to be a better leader and to lead from your strengths. Number 2, what specific actions? So once you've got these 3 things, what are a couple things you could do tomorrow, today, to influence that change? What are some changes you can make? And number 3, are there any obstacles? And just a hint, if finding time is an obstacle, you definitely should stick around. All right, so I'll give you a couple minutes. See what we can come up with on those 3 questions. Okay, everybody got something written down? Okay, somebody share with me one thing. You don't have to go into detail here if you don't want, but share with me one thing that you took away from today you think you could use. At the very back.
Think about what is making people, instead of jumping to conclusions like the bad driver,
Yeah.
Being compassionate, and that they may have a very good reason for being assholes.
Assume, here's the way I look at it, because I mean, I hear you, right? And I tell people this when they go into organizations, right? I ask, especially business leaders, because you know, business leaders, they start to think their employees just aren't working hard enough. And I say, the reality is, if you think about people around you, most people are good people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
But we know if most people are good people, but we don't know what's going on in their life, right? We shouldn't draw assumptions. Let's draw positive conclusions and give them the chance to prove us otherwise. So. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Although I didn't take it from there, but absolutely. Yes.
Be more sensitive to the way that others see the world and adapt how I react to them.
Yeah. Influence is all about, and that model, it's all about adaptation. You know, the people who are the best influencers in our time, right? Think of Oprah Winfrey's and he's passed away now, but Steve Jobs, all these people, they weren't necessarily stuck in their own way. They were good at understanding what people wanted or want and giving it to them. That's influence. Somebody else? I had somebody up at the front here earlier, and then, yeah.
I like the chart, so I think I'm going to use that on people that I work with
Cool.
internally to be able to work better with them. And so I can picture it.
Oh, right on. Excellent. I will. If I think about it, I'll put it up on social media maybe tomorrow or something. I'll draw a nice picture and I'll put it up.
Tweet it, because obviously we're all following.
Yeah, I'll put it up on Twitter. Yeah. Well, some of you are. For those of you who aren't, it's pretty hard to find me. It's at Shawn Casemore. I'm difficult to find. One other example before we wrap up.
Just go for it and have the self-esteem to do it.
Yeah. You know, it's crazy. And I look at today, what I'm trying to do, and I talked to somebody the other day, and they said, so what's stopping you? And I said, I guess me. There's nothing we can't do. If you look at anybody in the world who's doing something and you want to do it, guess what? You can do it. The people are no different. We all come from the same place, right? You know, if you read the book Outliers, it suggests that there may be some mathematical reasons why some people are more successful than others. But other than that, we're all the same. We all come from the same place, all the same challenges, right? So with that said, here's what I want to end on. If you think about leading from strength, I want to suggest to you that for most of you anyways, in putting on events, your job is to inspire and motivate people, right? By bringing in the right speakers like me and other folks, right? But really, your job, you're the person behind the scenes trying to make it all happen to inspire a group of people, right? Around whatever the topic or theme is. And that's not easy, especially because you're not necessarily the one up on the stage, you know, doing it. You're behind the scenes pulling the strings and trying to make it happen. But if you practice leading from your own strengths and how you deal with other people, there was a talk upstairs on negotiating, right? If you're not, let's say in negotiation, if you're a highly detailed person, then lead with details in the negotiations. Dig into the details. If you're not, right, go with something else. If you're a direct person, then be a direct negotiator. Go with your strengths and use it to your advantage, because if you do, you're going to get better results and you're going to feel more comfortable doing it. Now, that said, we still have to be prepared to adapt our ways to get what we need from other people. But again, if you're thinking if it's not natural for you to be direct and you're trying to influence somebody who's direct, then find some way else to connect with them, right? Use that chart to say, well, gee, direct is really a weakness for me. Focus on the upper right-hand corner. What's the strength that is more effective for you? And use that constantly, and you'll find you'll be able to influence other people, and it'll feel a lot more comfortable for you. So here it is. This is what you've all been waiting for, sitting there impatiently. I'm still holding back on it, notice? Just want you to get all the contact information before we... No, I'm just kidding. Here it is. There is your clock hours code 0805. I feel like I'm on the shopping channel.
What's your book?
What's that?
What's your book?
Book will be out in December, but apparently the next 2 weeks on Amazon. It's called Operational Empowerment. It's how to... I can't remember what it's called. It's collaborate, engage, and innovate to beat the competition. Yeah.
I'm just standing up quickly to say thank you, Shawn. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Shawn, for that very interesting discussion. I am too going to try and be a little bit more sympathetic and empathetic to the crazy drivers and the flight people as well, and the planes. So on behalf of Travel Alberta, we thank you very much. I know you have another session next, and I have one of my colleagues who will also be thanking you for that session, and we'll have a lovely gift for you from Travel Alberta.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.